Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have maybe the build guide I have been dreading the most. The Warriors of Chaos might be a bit of a beast, but let's try and get this thing over with. Whew. All right, if you haven't checked out any of our build guides before, there are two parts. One part where I go through every unit in the frickin' roster, and what a roster this is. And then the second part where I focus on this specific patch and say what builds are good on this patch right now, a couple theory crafted builds that could work for you out there. When we're talking about what units as we go through them all, we just talk about what they generally do, not if they're currently strong or not, because then this build guide would last all of 1 or 2 patches, which is not very useful use of my time. Oh, let's get into it. There are so many lords. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Still going. Lots of lords. Still going. Demon Prince. You can grab the Demon Prince of Undivided, Slaanesh, Khorne, Tzeentch, or Nurgle. We went over them a bit in the Demons of Chaos guide, but all of them have mixed lores, except for Nurgle, which doesn't, Khorne doesn't have any magic, and Undivided just has fire magic. If you want a flying hybrid duelist lord, you can go with these guys, the Demon Princes. Undivided has fire damage, and then some small buffs for your army around you. Slaanesh version has a lot better duelist stats. He has multiple debuffs for enemy duelists nearby, and then a couple buffs for himself. Khorne is just a tanky, high damage dealing monster that you can just roll through these guys, but he can be kind of squishy with only 60 armor and 7,000 HP, so be careful where you throw him. Tzeentch caster has various shenanigans he can use around Winds of Magic, giving him spell mastery or power recharge rate, which is quite nice. And then he has a hybrid lore of magic, which can be helpful. And the Nurgle one is one of your only ways to get healing on this roster. So you can bring Fleshy Abundance, which is quite nice, or Spirit Leech, Fate of Boon, all those things. And he's kind of an okay duelist. Any other lords that have a bunch of different variations? Chaos Sorcerer Lord, got it. Undivided has access to death, fire, metal, and shadows. You can ride a dragon or a manticore, usually the two options for flying duelists. You can also go with a war shrine for a bit more support, or a steed to be nice and cheap. It does have a net through the Tormentor's Sword, and some decent abilities for Winds of Magic regeneration. The Nurgle version of this caster does not have a net, no Tormentor's Sword, but he does have the option to get a Rot Beast, which is a good duelist mount. And again, he's one of your few options for bringing healing and Flushing Abundance with the lore of Nurgle. Filth Mace can give him terror, and Crown of Everlasting Conquest is amazing at giving him self-regeneration, so he doesn't have to spend any of that precious healing on himself. Then the Tzeentch Chaos Lords have Metal and Tzeentch to offer. They can go up on a disc to be insanely tanky and very, very mobile for a relatively cheap price point, and they can bring the Sword of Change to summon a Chaos Spawn. So Tzeentch is probably your best caster of these options. Nurgle offers some healing, combining stat things, and Undivided can ride a dragon. That's roughly the difference between the three. For the generic Chaos Lord, marked by all these guys, okay, none of them have spells they need to worry about. So the Undivided Chaos Lord can also ride a Chaos Dragon or a Manticore or a Chariot and whatnot. Has some okay dueling stats, but generally doesn't excel at it, so he's just kind of okay, but he's a little cheaper than some of your legendary lord options. Slaanesh version does have a rapier that he can pop and immediately rampage something, which, as you know, rampage is pretty much a net. So he just has a 17-second plus 10 seconds, so he can net something for 27 seconds if he's in combat with it when he pops this. That can be quite nice. Other than that, he's relatively cheap and tanky. Khorne version has some half-hearted buffs for your allies, but assuming he gets buffs in the future, he gives more melee attack and leadership in multiple forms to everyone around him. He just wants to make people keep fighting. He's more of a general than a duelist. And then the Lord of Tzeentch can be super tanky on a disc or on his Chaos Steed, but mostly on the disc. The disc mount is teeny tiny, hard to shoot, and then he has really impressive anti-large armor-piercing halberd stats. And he does have a bit of tankiness with his own shield regeneration, which is quite nice, which is constant. So it's kind of like he has regeneration. Yeah, he's a good anti-large hunter. Ugh, that is all the multiple version lords we have. On to the legendary lords. I guess we'll stick with casters. Be'lakor, like I said in the Demons of Chaos build guide, is the most expensive lord in the entire game. He is a really good duelist. He is a really good churning combatant, can kill a lot of units quickly, even if he jumps into infantry, can get good damage out. He has self-healing as long as people around him are routing or close to it, and he makes things easier to route by removing immune to psychology and lowering their leadership at the same time. He himself is also crazy tanky with the Shadow Shroud. 60% damage resistance is one of the highest in the game, rivaled only by Vlad's von Karstein ring. All that said, he is a pretty penny, so you're paying a lot of gold for that, and he's only a Shadows caster. So if Shadow spells are what you want, and you want a flying, spooky duelist lord, then he could be an option for you. Though be prepared to have a small army. So our thoroughly Everchosen, Everwatcher, sorry, not the Everchosen. The Everchosen's right next to him. So thoroughly Everwatcher, once again, is kind of a hybrid duelist caster bird monster, like the Demon Princes we went through earlier. I wonder, if I have unit caps on, does that block out the Demon Princes? Oh, well, obviously I'm over there. Anyway, I'll get to it when I get to it. He's a metal caster bird, has some good casting options with the Great Arcane Conduit, giving him more Winds of Magic and Spell Mastery, but his big thing is he's great at supporting cavalry fights. With a Rock of Inevitability and Standard Eye, he can make your cav more tanky and make the enemy cav easier to hit while slowing them so they can't escape from you. This can be quite nice when paired up with Chaos Knights, because you can also have Plague of Rust. So Chaos Knights don't have armor piercing, they just have high stats. So once you Plague of Rust someone, they all of a sudden won't want that fight, and then you can slow them and make their melee defense lower, so they'll just get hit in the butt as they try and leave. Archaon, the actual Everchosen, has a triple lore of magic, death, fire, and metal, and he has very good spells on top of it. He is your best single entity duelist in... Actually, he's the best in the entire game, not just your best. Slayer of Kings is an insane buff to his power, and then Crown of Domination plus the Armor of Morcar can be good leadership buffs and keep his nearby allies in the fight. Fight or Die buffs up his stats, but also everyone around him as per usual. And Kindle Flame, if you take it, you should take it even if you're not taking a fire spell, because he himself does fire damage. So it's just whenever you cast a spell, Archaon does 20% more damage for 15 seconds. That can be super great. And like I said, he's a great single entity sniper duelist guy, because he can also bring Spirit Leech. So if you have just like this, and Dwarger's mount, I probably got the Armor of Morcar, but you can do whatever you want. I don't know, you could have something like this, and he is an unparalleled duelist that'll beat anybody in the entire game as long as he's fighting when Slayer of Kings and Armor of Morcar is active. So, yeah, Archaon's incredible. He is still very expensive, and he is just on a horse, so he can only get so far so fast. Still going with the caster duelist lords. We have an infantry-sized flying duelist Slaanesh caster, one of your first sources of Rampage on this roster. Yeah, I don't think they have a Slaanesh sorcerer just yet. So you can cast Pavane. Azazel's great at that, drawing people out of formation, getting them into bad situations with rampaging them away from their allies. Other than that, he just has the Slaanesh Lords of Magic, and he does have the Demon Blade for more shenanigans about getting someone debuff. Minus 16 leadership debuff on the Demon Blade when it's active is quite strong. So he's great at pulling someone out of formation and then routing them for your army to tear them apart while they run. More casters. We have Village the Cursling, a foot caster who is very tanky. High melee stats, but also has the Twisted Twin to get more melee stats the longer he is just around in combat. And then he has his own barrier regeneration for himself, both through barriers per second while casting. There it is. He also has the Paragon of Change, just constant barrier regeneration, which is essentially regeneration. Because with his high melee stats, his HP won't actually fall that much, so his barriers will usually be active, meaning that he can just constantly regenerate them up. And then you can take any Tzeentch spell with him. Festus the Leech Lord is our final caster lord. Lord of Nurgle, and he is the best at blob fights in the entire roster. Infantry sized, he's easy to hide in the middle of like aspiring champions or chosen or something to defend him, and then he has a constant Mortis Engine Drain effect he can have active, or he can have constant healing active one way or the other. Has some debuffs here and there, but is also a Nurgle caster, so he can offer healing. Overcasting fleshy abundance on a chosen blob while you're draining down everyone who tries to fight you is pretty brutal. For our melee combat lords, kind of surprised there's only 3, but here we are. I suppose I got rid of the generic Chaos Lord a second ago. Valkia the Bloody, amazing anti-large duelist, relatively cheap, up in the sky, flying around. Does not cause terror, however. Has some decent buffs and debuffs. Mostly you just want to take her for the Spear Sleipnir. A two-use wind spell that does a lot of damage, especially against light infantry. But it's pretty great at clearing out stuff, and then after that she's still a solid anti-large duelist. That her low profile makes it hard to snipe her out with like cavalry or monstrous infantry. Sigvald the Magnificent is Gorok, but for the Warriors of Chaos. He is going nowhere. He has decently high weapon strength, a lot of dueling buffs. But mostly he is just here to be tanky, with very high melee stats, perfect vigor so he can't ever get his stats reduced, and then Auric Armor offers healing for himself. He is just there to stand until time ends around him. But he is just a Footlord. He can't get to the key fights you want him in, so you kind of have to make the fight come to him if you want him to get damage out. Finally, collect Suneater. Anti-large, large duelist monster lord. Causes terror. High mass can get him through any infantry formation to the battle he actually wants. High speed with 78 and a very high HP pool. He is your tanky bruiser lord that this roster wanted. Archaon is a better duelist 1v1, but Archaon's horse can also get him into some trouble where he might get stuck in things that Kolek will not get stuck in. And a very high weapon strength plus Lord of the Storm bombardment spells. If something blobs up on top of him, he can cast a lightning bolt down and just shatter them all. He's nice. Heroes! Oh, once again. Okay, I'm thwarted by unit caps. I just wanted to see if the demon princes were available, and they were. There's a lot of variants. Exalted Heroes. Undivided just has some fire damage and some okay dueling stats, kind of. Tzeentch is significantly better. Meeting of the Minds, giving them melee attack, melee defense when there are spells being cast. Got it. But he also has the Assume Command, which is like the Skaven's power grab. +8 leadership if your Lord is sniped. So if you think your Lord is going to die no matter what, it can be neat to bring these guys and just lessen the blow of the Lord dying. And they do have the Book of Secrets, an RNG simulator about whether or not you'll get the spell you need, but there's Fate of Buna, Withering Heat, and Enfeebling Foe. And they are anti-large armor piercing with Colossal Strike, and they can be very tanky on a disc. For Khorne, you can get a healing potion for your Exalted Hero, so just high melee stats, and then he can heal himself up, so you have to kill him all over again. Has a lot of different mounts, and one of the mounts offers armor piercing in the Juggernaut. I guess the Gorby's Chariot does as well. Khorne is just more of a get into the fight and duel with anybody sort of guy. And then the Exalted Hero of Nurgle. Base armor piercing is very strong, and they have incredible duelist support buffs. Helm of Many Eyes, +54 melee defense is pretty insane, and +50% damage from hero killing blow is quite nice. Rot Beasts give them increased stats, and Chaos Steeds, still solid. It's for relatively cheap. So Exalted Heroes usually want to pair 2 of them and 2v1 anything on the map, but their small profiles are great at pairing up together. If you don't have a caster lord, you can get one of the caster heroes. Nurgle, Slaanesh, or Tzeentch. So here you can get a Slaanesh caster that's not a Zazel. You can have Shadows or Slaanesh. And you can also get Soul Feeder, where he'll heal himself when he's casting a spell. Usually that is best paired with the Chaos War Shrine, because the Chaos War Shrine, the more stuff dies around it, it'll start doing more Descend and Drain effects. And then healing that War Shrine with a massive HP pool is much better than healing himself with like 4,000 HP. You could heal him when he has 12,000 HP. And healing is a percentage, so you get way more healing on the War Shrine. For Nurgle, you can either do Death or Nurgle. Both are fine. On his Rot Beast, he's a solid duelist. That's nice. Otherwise, you can keep him cheap and chipper or put him on a Chaos War Shrine for AoE healing, though that does make him a greater target. Tzeentch. Metal or Lore of Tzeentch. You could have the Skull of Catan for one-time use, strong spell mastery, though you do damage yourself a little bit in the process. You can do a Disc of Tzeentch to make him tanky and flying, or a Chaos War Shrine to make him tanky and supportive. And then for Undivided, we have Death, Fire, Metal, and Shadows. They have Forbidden Rod, where they can get you a bit more Winds of Magic, though they damage themselves and they have no form of healing, so that is a little risky. Beyond Chaos Steed, Manticore, or War Shrine. Undivided War Shrine is a little limp. Physical resistance and vigor, that charges up, and then +10 leadership at all times. But enough about the casters. No more casters. We have Aecold Hellbrass, Tzeentch hero, who does have Sigvald-like tendencies. He can just be a good foot duelist, sprints into any fight and stands around swinging till the end of time. That's roughly what he does. High stats, self-regeneration, then he can have melee damage reflection for all allies in range, which can be good in a grind fight with a bunch of light infantry. And his Windblade can clear out blobs okay. But generally, you just want to cut a lot of his stuff and make him as cheap as possible. 1350 is still not crazy cheap for this guy. Skyla Anfengrim. A single model Rat Ogre looking guy. A monstrous hero who can dive into enemy fights. High speed, high leadership, does have a slow drain around enemy combatants if he is in melee. He also has Kill for Corn. One of this roster's only rampage sources is a small circle that rampages you and then does a bunch of damage, which is quite nice. And he can get Crimson Juggernaut for extra speed and stats, and he can get more spell resistance and damage resistance as things are killed around him. He's kind of meant to be a generic bruiser, not really a duelist specifically. So he's meant to hop fight to fight, especially fighting cavalry will be good for him with high weapon strength and melee attack. Low armor and low melee defense with a relatively low health pool and a high price point does make him a little squishy, so you do have to take care of him. And then there's Herald Hammerstorm. Herald is a solid foot duelist of Khorne, but the main thing you want him for, as Hazel shakes loudly in the background, the main thing you want him for is fighting undead. He is specifically great against undead. Bane of the Undead removes the undead attribute, making them just low leadership nothings. And then when the undead start routing, it can be really brutal. Like zombies just retreating away, or skeletons retreating away. Because the undead are bounced around having low leadership, but they can't technically break. They just, crumble slowly. This takes away their main advantage. Harry is very hard for undead factions to deal with. Woo! All right, we got through the Lords and Heroes. We're almost done, right? Nope. Still like a billion? Okay. All right. Let's take this one at a time. Marauders. Marauders. So, you can take... Okay, we just need to get something out of the way so I can just glance over it for the rest of this build because I can't do this every single time saying the same things. Slaanesh offers physical resistance and immune to psychology and a little more speed. Tzeentch offers barriers and magic damage. Khorne offers frenzy, higher melee attack in general, higher damage in general, spell resistance, but you lose melee defense. Okay. Nurgle offers more HP in general, more melee defense in general, and poison, a little less melee attack. Anything that is marked, you can take those various versions, and I don't want to keep listing what they do all the time. Okay? Basic Marauders, or any of the marked Marauders, are your bog standard frontline. They will not beat almost anyone. Even like skinks or clan rats, Marauders take forever to kill them and don't perform that well, but they're the cheapest frontline you have. So if for some reason you have other stuff going on, you just need basic Marauders to distract people for a little bit, these are your guys. We have Marauders with great weapons where you can get them or Nurgle. Again, Nurgle has the buffs that Nurgle usually has. These guys have decent armor piercing and still a high-ish melee attack of 34, so they can do okay versus cavalry that wants to charge into them or armored frontlines. Though with their low stat pool, most armored infantry have the stats to beat back these guys anyway, so they're still very, very cheap. Marauders Tzeentch with spears are Tzeentch specific. Magic damage, anti-large. These are your cheapest anti-large you can find on the entire roster if you have the Tzeentch marks to go around. As on the Warriors of Chaos, I believe on the Quick Battle Ladder, you can only take 5 marked units, so be careful how you spend them. Marauders of Khorne dual weapons. Your Berserker Infantry have really high damage for such a cheap price point, but not that significant of a bonus versus infantry, and a crazy low melee defense usually means these guys take as much damage as they deal, which is problematic. Better against light infantry. And then Marauders of Slaanesh with Hell Scourges have really, really good melee defense, and their immune to psychology makes them very tanky and hard to dislodge by normal tactics. So they'll last the longest for your cheap frontline. Chaos Warriors! And then Forsaken. I don't want to forget the Forsaken, so I'm going to pull them up now, but I'm going to push them to the end. Chaos Warriors, your mid-tier armored infantry, usually have higher melee defense stats, very high armor, higher HP, and higher leadership than your Marauders. Still not that great of weapon strength or melee attack overall, and they're very slow. So as an offensive push, they're more like a glacier that can't be stopped, rather than like an avalanche that'll knock you over instantly. Again, you can mark them for your various buffs that we've discussed ad nauseum. You can grab their Great Weapon variant or the Nurgle Great Weapon variant for punching through armored front lines. Unlike the Marauders, these guys actually have enough stats to duel well against other armored infantry, so this can be a good use versus dwarves or chaos dwarves or something like that. And then you have your halberds, the most common variant to see taken, better against monstrous infantry or large single entity monsters, but still solid enough melee stats to deal with boxes and whatnot. So if you get into the late game, then you just have halberds. They can be pretty spooky, though a lack of immune to psychology does mean they can find themselves routing to terror. Chaos Warriors of Khorne are your only dual weapon variant, but very, very high damage and better bonus versus infantry. Nope, still 5 for some reason, but Frenzy and 36 base melee attack can still help them a lot. 110 armor and a high weapon strength is fine. So, yeah, still good. Better at killing light infantry, though. Just churn through infinite light infantry with these guys. And Chaos Warriors of Slaanesh, the Hell Scourges. Like the Hell Scourge Marauders, these guys have amazing melee defense, high armor, and immune to psychology, making them even harder to peel away. And their poison makes it harder for you to run away, and you deal less damage to them even when you get a hit through that armor and melee defense. These guys will last forever. They're your infantry versions of Sigvald and Eocold. Finally, the Mirror Guard is a regiment of renown. They have a Lord buff where they give you +10 melee defense if they're fighting next to your Lord. Pretty good at defending Festus or Village or any of your Foot Lords of Chaos. They're fine at that. Really strong melee stats, though a lack of armor piercing on their weapon strength is problematic. They're more tanky than damaging. They're still great, though. Mirror Guard are great units. Forsaken are your aggressive blitzing units. They are eating good right now. High armor, high mass, high HP, high speed, high melee attack, high weapon strength. They suffer from low melee defense. And that is about it. These guys are great. They'll kill any infantry in your way. Just point them in a direction and shoot. These are your true berserkers. Not that tanky. They do have high armor, but not that tanky, really. With that low melee defense, everything chips them down just a little bit. And the Demon Spew, Forsaken, ROR have Swarm of Flies, giving everyone else less melee attack when they're around them. Other than that, poison and just higher stats, I guess. They have 12 more melee defense than regular, so they actually have decent melee defense, which is new for Forsaken, I suppose. Not done with the infantry yet. Okay, what do we got? Chosen. Got it. So 2 aspiring champions. Severed Claw is a Tzeentch aspiring champion ROR. It just gives aspiring champions halberds and shields. That's about it. Higher stats too. Regular aspiring champions are only 16 models, very high stats, very high weapon strength, and they provide encourage. These guys are supremely tanky. Having less models means you take less damage from chariots, less damage from cavalry, less damage from most spells, and then they have crazy high armor. They still have amazing HP, almost 10,000 HP, whereas Chaos Warriors have 9,000. They have more HP than a Chaos Warrior with only 16 models. Do you know how hard it is to kill one of those models? It's very, very difficult. And their weapon strength is super high as well. Aspiring champions are only held back by being slow and expensive. Chosen! Your most elite of the most elite units in the game. Chosen are just jacked up Chaos Warriors who are themselves jacked up Marauders. Still very slow, still very grinding, depending on what lore, what god you worship. Khorne's Chosen are a little bit better at getting through front lines, but regularly Chosen are an unbreakable anvil that will win any melee fight given enough time. 60 melee defense on the base one is rather impressive. High armor, high HP, high stats. You can also upgrade them for great weapons. Still crazy high stats, high weapon strength, and now armor piercing, though they lose the shields. You can grab halberds for even higher melee defense. Still good armor piercing, but a bonus versus large makes them a little more specialized to just kill large targets. Not great at fighting infantry with these ones. Chosen Core dual weapons can kill any infantry very, very quickly and get through that front line nice and fast for you. Backed up by Chosen of Slaanesh with Hell Scourges, who are the most unbreakable infantry the Warriors of Chaos have. They're like iron breakers on this roster. 70 base melee defense with 120 armor is pretty ridiculous. These guys are slow crushers that will eventually kill everything, but eventually is doing a lot of work in that sense. Finally, the Slaughter Guard, Chosen of Khorne Halberd, ROR, have unyielding assault, meaning their melee attack cannot be lowered, and they have Frenzy, with a very high leadership pool, means Frenzy will be mostly active until they die. Magic damage, fire damage, anti-large, armor piercing, but a crazy high price point and no shields can make these guys a little susceptible to archer fire. Or handguns or whatever, just missiles. Oh, there's still so much left. Oh, I knew this guide was going to be intense. I knew it. There's so many units. Which means you should play Warriors of Chaos, because you can never get bored. There's all these units. Look at all these units. All right, let me group some stuff up by Regiment of Renown. Oh, boy. 1 second. All right, sorry. Dog had a conniption. I had to go stop her because Grace is working from home, so that'd be not great. Cavalry for the Warriors of Chaos, huh? Well, your only light cavalry melee options are if you have Slaanesh marks available to still spend. You can grab either of the Hellstriders. Hellstriders of Slaanesh are crazy fast light cavalry with immune to psychology because they are Slaanesh, and they also have Soul Hunters, which gives them buffs if nearby units are routing. No, it's just the kills. Oh. Ugh. More kills they get, more leadership and damage resistance they get, which is quite nice. You can have the cheaper version, which gets a little bit of bonus versus large help, provides poison damage, or the Hell Scourges, which also have poison damage, but higher generalist stats. They don't rely on something being large. On to Chariots. We have Chaos Chariots. Various marks do various marks things, as you know from the rest of this guide. These are your cheapest Chariots, kind of tanky with 110 armor, but a low melee defense and low HP pool. They can die very quickly if they're in a bad situation. Good at disruption and good versus light infantry. Not good versus heavy infantry or anything with mass. Sibilant Slaughtercade is a Slaanesh regiment of renowned Chaos Chariot. Has Soul Hunters like the Hellstriders, so the more kills it gets, the more stats it gets. And then it has much higher leadership and immune to psychology, keeping them from routing, making them a little bit tankier and better with poison and higher melee defense. So they are significantly tankier than your base Chariot, though at a higher price point. Gorby's Chariots do a ton of damage. They are still good versus armored infantry, as well as being good against the other things normal Chaos Chariots are. Gorby's Chariots do kind of okay against light cav, still bad versus heavy cav and monsters, though, so you want to use them to kill heavy infantry boxes or infantry boxes of any kind. You can also grab a corn one for just more stats. Back onto cavalry. Chaos Knights are the centerpiece of your mobility roster. Chaos Knights come in all the different marks with all the different special marks things. These guys are just high stat, high armor, low speed, heavy cavalry. At only 70 speed, they can't catch a lot of their elven counterparts, elven heavy cav. And without armor piercing or anti-large, they'll lose most duels versus other elite cavalry, unless you're supported by, I mentioned Sarthoriel earlier with his Plague of Rust and his AoE debuffs. They can do well for that, but otherwise they're kind of blockers more than true damage dealers without support. You can grab them with lances, just increases their charge bonus while decreasing some of their base stats slightly. And again, they come in all the various marks. Then there's the Swords of Chaos. Swords of Chaos get armor piercing. They have less models, so pretty decent HP considering they have less models, so each model is a little more tanky. Fire damage for them, and they have Apocalyptic Charge, which gives them charge bonus, affecting all allies in range. I guess they can just pop that once in a while. They have Guardian, ITP, and Cause Fear, but only having 24 models can cause them problems, whereas the Aspiring Champions are super tanky and crazy. Swords of Chaos, you generally want your Chaos Knights to swarm an area and get a lot of damage out rather than be tanky, so they can have issues getting true damage out onto what you're running down. Some more marked units. Tzeentch brings Doom Knights to the table. Flying Disc Knights with magic damage, but not high armor piercing, no anti-large, anything like that. Silver Shields, 120 armor, barriers, and being on a disc make them crazy, crazy tanky to missile units specifically, but a low HP pool makes them very squishy when in melee. The Doom Knight ROR, the Knights of Immolation, higher stats, fire damage, but they also have rock drops in the form of Searing Torment, so they can bombardier things below them and cause warp flame, so they're reducing the armor of whatever they're bombing, making it easier for the troops fighting them to get kills. Skull Crushers of Khorne are your anti-large armor-piercing cavalry. First one you've had so far, though another one is coming up from Nurgle. These guys are supposed to have crazy high stats in the armor and melee attack department, and should have insane damage with high weapon strength and frenzy. Spell Resist also resists normal things like Fate of Buna that take out other elite cavalry, like the Fireborn. So, no Fate of Buna to kill off your Skull Crushers. Knights of the Brazen Throne lose their anti-large, get anti-infantry instead, but they have higher stats in general, and they have Murderous Charge, which gives them more mass and charge bonuses they're charging at something. These guys had a highlight reel in early Warhammer 3 of insta-killing infantry on the charge, and they can still do that. They just struggle versus larger targets, so they are better at killing infantry, any kind of infantry, wherever they are hiding. Rot Knights of Nurgle are a new addition to the roster. Anti-large armor piercing once again like the Skull Crushers, but the Skull Crushers theoretically do more damage, while the Rot Knights are a bit tankier, classic Nurgle schemes, but they have their self-regeneration, which is rather nice. 32 models is still fine, 100 armor is fine, and a bit more HP. The Rotting Riders, however, get plus 15 damage resistance until the first time they break. Yeah, it's a one-time use, so if they ever break, they lose the 15% damage resistance. They have magic damage, higher stats, very good at killing large units in cavalry. Okay, so that's it, right? We're done? Nope, still 3 more categories and one of them's huge. Got it, cool. Marauder Horsemen and Horsemen Throwing Axes and Marauder Horsemasters. All of your light skirmish cavalry that does not want to get shot by enemy archers or end up in melee with enemy cav, but they can beat dogs and archers in melee. Great at taking down monsters. A fantastic skirmish unit all around, and one of the only ranged options you have. I guess you have hell cannons, but if you have to deal with a blob and you don't want to just beat them in melee, these are your only options. Marauder Horsemen, lower stats, lower missile strength, cheaper than the other 2 variants, comes with Slaanesh and Tzeentch variants. The Tzeentch variant is particularly strong due to their warp flame, makes you weak to fire damage, which they are doing, and makes you have less armor when they don't deal armor piercing. So the Tzeentch ones are uniquely good due to their amazing synergy. Marauder Horsemen Throwing Axes, armor piercing, lower range, worse arcs of fire. The less straight shot from a horseman makes it easier to dodge, but if something is locked up in a blob or in a duel and not facing you, the Throwing Axes increased armor piercing missile strength can do a lot of work. Khorne and Nurgle have variants here as well, just for better melee stats. And finally, the Marauder Horsemasters, the best of all worlds, highest missile strength, though it is not armor piercing, it's still pretty darn strong, and the best light cavalry stats out of the 3, so these guys can actually fight back against like Illyrian Reavers or Peasant Horsemen, and all of them can fight back against dogs, but especially dogs, Marauder Horsemasters can beat up quite easily. So Marauder Horsemasters are the best of your skirmish cav. I'm going to hop down to Artillery and War Machines because it's so short and the Monsters and Beasts is scaring me. You have one thing, it's the Hell Cannon. You can take an ROR Hell Cannon, but you're taking a Hell Cannon either way. The Soul of Damnation has higher stats, higher accuracy, higher ammunition, and that's about it. It also has Soul Devour, so stuff... Yeah, it gets reload skill when someone's nearby. Cool. That's not very useful, so who cares about that? Hell Cannons are piloted by Chaos Dwarves. They are an unbreakable crew that will never abandon their mount. High damage, homing shots that can do really solidly versus anything. Hell Cannons can shoot at anything and do well. Fire at enemy artillery, archers, heavy infantry, light infantry, cavalry, single entities, doesn't matter, they're great. The only problem they have is letting enemy archers or skirmish cav get in range of them, or letting enemy artillery shoot at them. Because enemy artillery can easily kill the Hell Cannon model, and then you just have a useless Chaos Dwarf crew running around, and enemy archers can kill the crew super quickly. So you do need to buy space for the Hell Cannon, but if you do, it does really good work. No complaints. All right, Monsters and Beasts. Let's do it. Let's do it. Here we go. Here it is. We're setting it up. Oh my goodness. There's a lot. There's so many. There's too many. Just enough. Woo! Chaos Warhounds, your bog standard dogs. Good at running down units already routing. Good at supporting your cavalry. Good at killing archers. Don't want to fight any light infantry that have stats. Don't want to fight heavy infantry or cavalry of any kind. Chaos Warhounds with poison. Same, but better at supporting cav fights because they bring poison, which usually can help out your Chaos Knights. Now with Hellstriders and Rot Knights providing their own poison, they don't need dogs as much, but if you're running with just Chaos Knights, they could use a little buddy. Also, Chaos Warhounds can chase off whatever your cav just beat in a fight, and then your heavy cav can move on to other tasks rather than chasing down the last few models of a Silverhelm or an Empire Knight. Dogs can do that and come back. Chaos Feral Manticore. Cheapest source of terror on this roster? Yes. Flying 800 gold terror piece with okay stats, though it can rampage to its death, so you have to be careful about that. Still can be nice for adding it to a frontline fight and breaking through those units nice and quickly. Speaking of breaking through a frontline fight, we have Trolls and Armored Chaos Trolls. Trolls and Armored Chaos Trolls are just armor-piercing monstrous infantry with regeneration at a relatively cheap price point. They are cheap and chipper to throw at a front line and add mass and damage where your infantry might be lacking it. Armored Chaos Trolls just do that, but you're paying 100 gold for 70 more armor, which can be significant because basic archers will not do that much damage to armored chaos trolls. Light cavalry also struggles to kill the armored chaos trolls. Chaos Spawn are your other option. If you want to pay a little bit more money, you can get rid of the regeneration from those trolls, but increase their weapon strength. I believe they have a higher weapon strength than basic trolls. Yes, they do. You lose armor piercing, you gain weapon strength. You lose regeneration, you gain unbreakable and slightly higher stats. Chaos Spawn are monstrous infantry that hold a front line forever. They are a little more varied in their marks, so I will actually go through some of those quick. Tzeentch has Armor Sundering, which can be insane when paired with Forsaken. Forsaken have high weapon strength, but not high armor piercing. Just take away that armor, and you're good to go. Slaanesh can also reduce enemy stats, making your frontline tankier. And then Khorne and Nurgle have the basic increases in stats they normally do. But the Tzeentch Armor Sundering I really did want to mention. That can be great. Speaking of trolls, Nurgle has a special troll, the Bile Troll, and he just got a rework that has made him actually super useful. -8 leadership and -15 speed on contact is huge. That is great for breaking through low leadership front lines like Beastmen and Skaven front lines. So the Bile Trolls have been super fun. I've even been enjoying them versus Ogre Kingdoms. They also lower enemy melee defense by 6 around them, and they have their own regeneration, of course. Blood Beasts of Khorne are just Khorne stealing Rat Ogres and giving them jacked up stats at a jacked up price. Low armor, okay HP, low melee defense. You don't want Blood Beasts of Khorne fighting low tier infantry or getting shot by archers, but they trade up into most elite things. Armored infantry, armored heavy cav. They're great at that. They can also chase down archers with their very high speed of 65. So they're solid, aggressive monstrous infantry that are great at rushing down enemy things. Speaking of Chaos Spawn, we also have the Weird Spawn, just a Tzeentch ROR with Terror. Unbreakable Terror can be nice if you really want to pay 200 gold for more for Terror on your Chaos Spawn, otherwise just higher stats. They have the Armor Sundering that the other Tzeentch Spawn do as well. For our single entities, really quick, going to dip into the Chaos War Shrine. This is the world's tallest corpse cart. Provides various buffs. All of them provide leadership. The basic one provides physical resistance and vigor. Slaanesh's one does damage per second in a Mortis Engine terrain as stuff nearby dies to charge it up. The Tzeentch one gives power recharge, reserves, and spell mastery the more it charges up from allies, from enemies dying nearby. The Khorne one's the worst one, right? It gives damage and damage resistance for everybody who dies nearby, and then the Nurgle one provides healing for everyone who dies nearby. So they need to be in the center of a fight, and a lot of stuff needs to die next to them. Cockatrice is a Manticore with higher stats, crazier animations, and it does have a single-use slow into net. It can be useful for sniping out things, though he is very squishy with only 6,000 HP and 35 armor, so be careful not to put him in a bad situation or he will die super quick. Oh, the last of the non-single entities I suppose I can talk about. Summoners of Rage and the Dragon Ogres. Dragon Ogres are like Zotes. They are these kind of centaur-like anti-large armor-piercing monsters that have a lot of mass. Usually good against heavy cav or enemy monstrous infantry. They have low melee attack unless you're utilizing their 26 bonus versus large. Decently high melee defense, relatively low armor but high HP pools. They can do okay into light infantry and whatnot, but avoid halberds and avoid missiles. They'll have missile resistance from Scaly Skin, but avoid missiles. Summoners of Rage are just an upgraded version with magic damage and a bound chain lightning that they can use, but it has to recharge, and it only recharges if you're gained in melee. You're engaged in melee. So you do have to get into a melee fight and build up the storm with the Summoners of Rage. More single entity monsters. We have Chaos Giants. They are the exact same as every other giant you've seen ever. Crazy high weapon strength, high melee attack, they will never miss, and super high leadership means they'll never rout with an incredibly high HP pool. Their downfall is low armor, low melee defense means basic spears or missiles can cut them down, and they're so tall it is impossible for those missiles to miss, but giants are great if you're expecting just a melee brawl. Bilious Thunderguff is an upgraded giant, better stats, poison, and he has a fart. Yes, it is a fart that corrodes your armor and does some damage. So he's better at jumping into armored infantry and making them easier for your Forsaken to murder. Dragon Ogre Shaggoth is an anti-large armor-piercing duelist monster. He wants to find the other biggest monster and beat its ass. Maybe find some heavy cav as well. 76 speed, he's rather quick. High armor, high stats, solid. Causes terror. Slaughter Brute is fast with high weapon strength, less armor, and not less than the Dragon Ogre, but not a lot of armor regardless. Oh, they have the same armor. Cool. Higher HP, lesser leadership, but he does have a special thing that makes him unbreakable and gives him magic attacks, and he also can't rampage when his lord is alive. But if his lord is killed or routing, he will start to rampage and just run around fighting whatever, completely out of control. Spell resistance makes him hard to snipe out with like Flensing Ruin or Final Transmutation. The missile resistance helps a little bit. He's still very weak to getting pin cushioned. He does not kill infantry particularly quickly, so you do have to get the Slaughter Brute into a fight with either a single entity or some cavalry to make him worthwhile. Then finally, we have the Mutal Vortex Beasts. Regular Mutal Vortex Beast has an AoE buff, plus 8 melee attack for all your people around you. Then it has AoE nerfs, minus 6 melee attack, minus 4 melee defense, and minus 30% speed. And he has an AoE Mortis Engine effect, causes terror, but he is very squishy. 70 armor, decent melee defense. Honestly, 40 is pretty good, but I still feel like if he ends up in spears, he's going to have a bad time. He's very fast and responsive, so you need to kind of duck him in and out of fights, get him places where his barriers can protect him a little bit, and then his Mortis Engine effect can help to turn a fight around, and then run him away when he gets into a bit of trouble, or offer Fleshy Abundance to heal him up. AC in the Fallen is a Mutal Vortex Beast with more stats, but it also has a special ability, Maelstrom of Change, a spreading Fate of Buna type thing, but it does way less damage. But those are the units you should use against, not single entities. And it spreads to nearby units. You can just get some good damage out on elite cavalry or elite units. Other than that, it's just a Mutal Vortex Beast with more stats. Oh my god. That was such a long roster to go through. I only have the stamina and the expertise to offer you one build. I feel like we keep avoiding some of the undead, so let's do ogres. Yes, ogres are undead. I'm at this corner. Warriors of Chaos versus ogres. Village. These are my real builds. I think this is pretty solid versus ogres. So I'll go with the Twisted Twin, and Paragon's a change for his own regen, and then Treason of Tzeentch is my only spell. He is out on the ground, so he's pretty bad at casting Blue Fire and Pink Fire. Well, Pink Fire is fine on the ground, but he's bad at casting Blue Fire, and then he has no Winds of Magic generation stuff, so it's hard to get out a lot of Pink Fires of Tzeentch. I just go with Treason, because you'll see the rest of my build kind of hinges on it. So, I thought you used to have a leadership debuff, but whatever. Harry Hammerstorm. You can take him butt naked, 1600 for -4 leadership, and that's not worth it. Never mind. Skip him. Skip him. Skip Harry. So I like Bile Trolls a lot, especially with Village's Treason of Tzeentch -16 leadership, and then Bile Trolls offer -8 more leadership on contact. You can route Noblars off super quickly, and then without Noblars, ogres are going to have a worse time. So let's see, I have Mark of Tzeentch and 2 Marks of Nurgle. So for now, let's grab some Chaos Warriors Halberds and some Forsaken. Forsaken are very solid, Halberds are very solid, and now without the Noblar support, because Treason of Tzeentch and Bile Trolls kicked them out, we're doing good. I'm going to get 2 Hellstriders of Slaanesh with the anti-large, and now I've used up all my marks, but these guys are good at running down Sabertusk packs or rear-charging ogres, doing any of those good things for me. Can grab some Marauder Horsemasters and some Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes to throw at Crushers or blobs of any kind, or giants or Stonehorns or something like that. And then 750 gold. Get a 4th Forsaken. This is fine. You'll crush through their front line, and then the ogres will be down to just literal ogre units that sit on top of your halberds or Forsaken and have a terrible time while you skirmish them. Be really solid. You're mostly worried about getting kited by lead belchers, but with 4 skirmish cav and some Hellstriders, you should be able to get in range to mess those guys up, but it can be a hard matchup. On this current patch, ogres are one of the strongest factions in the game, so you're just kind of born for a bad time. You can play it a lot of different ways, though. This roster is huge. A different way you can do it, I'm not going to build the whole build, but you could skip Village and go with like Archaon and then go more mobile. Keep the skirmish cav, keep the Hellstriders, but cut Forsaken and just get Marauders instead. Cut the Chaos Warriors as well. Cut the Bile Trolls and get like Blood Beasts of Khorne, or get anything that's fast and can keep up with the ogres and just run at them. Dragon Ogres and whatnot. That can also be okay. And then undead. I said we skipped them, and then I skipped them. Vampire counts versus Warriors of Chaos. Slaughter Guard are usually pretty good here. Vampire counts have access to Spirit Leech. Let's do. Or Skirmish Cav. Herald Hammerstorm is pretty good against the undead. Spooking them and scaring them, and then we can go Archaon. With his own counter Spirit Leech and Burning Head. Burning Head's leadership debuff, clearing out zombies, plus using Herald Hammerstorm to get people to run away. I'll cut down to just Slayer of Kings. You can cut Fight or Die, so Archaon's as cheap as I can kind of make him. So this is fine. Harry's going to go through the front line. I only need Marauders to really back him up too much. Could grab a couple Forsaken, just because they're so great at churning through stuff. Then Skirmish Cav is fine. I need to defend against the buffed Black Knights, so what do I have for marks? I don't think I have any marks here. Yeah, no marks. Could grab Skull Crushers, though these guys keep disappointing me and making me really sad. I'm going to grab Rot Knights. I do want 2 Rot Knights, but it's getting pretty expensive. I don't know if I need Harry. Yeah, screw Harry. It's too much. He's too much. So this gives me a little more stuff. I could grab some dogs to support the Rot Knights. So the Rot Knights have their own poison, so I don't necessarily need dogs to do that. Grab Hellstriders. Hellstriders are okay. Hellstrider and a dog. Something like that could be okay. Kite out the Warriors of Chaos. Use your Rot Knight's regeneration. If a Blood Knight comes out to play, slap them in the mouth and send them running. And when they run away, hit them with a bunch of Marauder Horsemen. And you back off or regenerate and you kind of kite them out. So, yeah, kite the vampires. You could also go a crazy blobby route with like a Mutal Vortex Beast and Herald Hammerstorm. It's also fine. There's a lot of different ways to play most of the matchups because your roster is so freaking gigantic, you can do anything you want. This has been a long guide. Hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye. Roar. Subscribe, yes, yes.